Coming up today, explosive claims in the memoir of a former foreign minister are rocking the political scene. Moon Jae-in, a potential presidential candidate, is under fire for allegedly consulting directly with North Korea some 10 years ago. It's a tough time for graduates in South Korea with a lack of high-quality jobs available. Latest data shows 1 in 3 unemployed people are university degree holders. Plus, a battle has begun to recapture the Iraqi city of Mosul from the Islamic State militant group. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Monday, the 17th of October. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story, the memoirs of a former foreign minister have set off an unexpected controversy in domestic politics. This latest conflict revolves around the Naum administration's North Korea policy and Moon Jae-in, the chief of staff to the late president, who is himself a potential presidential candidate. Our political correspondent Park Ji-won starts us off.
Former Foreign Minister Song Min-soon's account of a decision made during the Naum administration has set off a firestorm in domestic politics. The account, told in a section of the memoir released last week, details South Korea's decision to abstain from a 2007 vote on a UN resolution on North Korea's human rights record. Based on Song's account, Moon Jae-in, who was the chief of staff to the late president at the time, reportedly proposed that South Korea ask for North Korea's opinion on the matter before the vote. Seoul ended up abstaining from the vote, but President No later expressed regret about the decision and said Seoul shouldn't have asked for Pyongyang's opinion on the matter. Since the revelation emerged last week, the ruling Saenuri party has lobbed harsh criticism at Moon and the opposition parties, accusing them of conspiring with the enemy. They said it makes no sense for South Korea to have sought North Korea's approval on the matter and called for a parliamentary hearing to get to the bottom of the issue. Moon, the former chairman of the main opposition Minju Party of Korea and a presidential hopeful in 2017, said it is deeply insulting for the Saenuri party to accuse him of conspiracy, and he accused the party of not having its own philosophy of inner Korean relations. Lawmakers close to Moon said that he initially favored voting for the UN resolution, and he wanted to respect the opinions of the majority of his staff. The minor opposition People's Party also had a strong reaction to the unfolding controversy. It said the ruling party is not in a position to point fingers at the opposition when the party and the presidential office are at the center of corruption allegations surrounding key figures, including Choi Soon-sil, who allegedly used her personal ties to President Park Geun-hye to solicit donations for 2 foundations. The presidential office has also responded. At a regular briefing, the presidential spokesperson said it would be serious and shocking development if the account of the events in the memoir were true. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Turning now to Seoul and Washington's efforts to rein in North Korea. The two allies are set for high-level talks in Washington later this week, where they will seek to enhance their extended deterrence against Pyongyang's nuclear threats at the Security Consultative Meeting, which will be held on Thursday, local time. South Korea's Defense Minister Han Min-gu and U.S. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter are likely to discuss the deployment of more U.S. strategic weaponry to the peninsula to deter further North Korean provocations. The U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan, is currently docked at a port in Busan after taking part in a joint South Korea-U.S. naval drill last week. Now, on Wednesday this week, the two defense chiefs will hold a 2+2 meeting with South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and his U.S. counterpart John Kerry to discuss additional sanctions on North Korea for its September 9th nuclear test. The 30th plenary meeting of the Missile Technology Control Regime kicks off in Korea's southern port city of Busan on this Monday, with South Korea chairing the event for the first time in 12 years. The 35-member MTCR, established back in 1987, aims to control and prevent proliferation of missile-related technology and equipment, as well as unmanned aerial vehicle technology for weapons of mass destruction. Now, this year's meeting is expected to largely discuss ways to cut off export channels that deliver missile-related technology or items to North Korea, renew the list of restricted goods, and strengthen the MTCR system. On the third day of the five-day meeting, South Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Im Sung-nam is expected to give a speech in which he'll underline that North Korea is the biggest threat to the international non-proliferation regime. South Korea is seeking ways to integrate North Korean defectors into society. A government official said on Monday that the government wants central and local governments and local communities to foster participation among North Koreans in the South, following criticism that the existing ideological divide between the two Koreas has made it difficult to bridge that gap. The number of North Korean defectors is expected to top 30,000 next month. President Park Geun-hye has recently been calling for a system to resettle defectors in the South. The protracted economic slowdown in South Korea is weighing heavily on the job market. Even people with degrees from good schools are struggling to find work, due largely to high-quality and well-paying jobs drying up amid the sluggish economy. Now, Kim Min-ji has the details.
In yet another signal that Korea's labor market is in dire straits, nearly 1 in 3 people who are currently out of work have a degree from a four-year university or higher. According to Statistics Korea, the number of unemployed came to 985,000 in the third quarter of this year, while 315,000, or almost a third of the total, had graduate degrees. The figure is the highest since relevant data began to be compiled in 1999, and it's also the largest proportion of people with degrees who are out of work. Even in the aftermath of the Asian financial crisis in 1999, the proportion of unemployed people with university degrees stood at only 12%. However, the figure has been on a steady climb since 2011, with the exception of a slight dip in 2014. Experts attribute the rise mainly to the country's high university entrance rate. The rate stood at almost 71% in 2014, the highest in the OECD. As a result, although there are more university graduates, there's a mismatch in employment due to a lack of quality jobs amid a sluggish economy. The overall jobless rate stood at 3.6% in September, the highest for that month in 11 years. The youth jobless rate came to 9.4%, also the highest monthly figure tallied since 1999. And in another reflection of the feeble job market, the number of people in Korea who work 17 hours or less a week hit a 5-year high in the third quarter of this year. The figure stood at around 1.3 million in the July to September period, up 91,000 from a year ago. The rise was attributed in part to the government's push to offer flexible working hours for women who previously had difficulty finding work after giving birth or because of child-rearing responsibilities. Another reason cited was the weak economy, which has forced companies to hire more part-time workers than full-time employees. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, a British research firm has predicted brighter prospects for the global shipping industry, which has suffered from dwindling orders and eye-watering losses in recent years. According to a report by Clarkson Research Services, orders will continue to lag in the short term, accounting for just 1/3 the annual average over the last 2 decades, or roughly 2,200 orders a year. The research firm expects 586 orders this year and 790 in 2017. However, global shipmakers are expected to recover starting in 2018, with orders doubling compared to 2017, and the upward trend is set to continue through 2020. Japan's Prime Minister has reportedly sent a ritual offering to the controversial Yasukuni Shrine to mark its annual autumn festival. Media reports say Shinzo Abe did not visit the shrine in person, a move regarded as a way to avoid diplomatic tensions with Korea and China. This, though, has raised speculation about whether Japanese Defense Minister Tomomi Inada, a close ally to the Prime Minister and a supporter of his push to revise Japan's pacifist constitution, will visit the shrine instead of Abe. Dozens of Japanese lawmakers are slated to visit the shrine during the autumn festival, which runs through this Thursday. The shrine honours Japan's war dead, including several Class A war criminals, and is regarded by Korea and China as a symbol of Japan's past militarism. Turning now to the latest in the fight against the Islamic State militant group, and Iraq's Prime Minister has announced the start of a military offensive to retake the country's second city from the extremist group. EG1 has more.
The long-awaited operation to retake the Iraqi city of Mosul from the Islamic State group has begun. Iraqi Prime Minister al-Abadi has announced that the fight is now on after Iraqi government and allied forces fought off pockets of ISIS fighters on the outskirts of the city.
Our victory has arrived and operations for the liberation of Mosul have begun.
Backed by the U.S.-led coalition against ISIS, the Iraqi military and popular mobilization units, composed of some 40 militias, have been moving toward Mosul and preparing for this battle for more than 15 months. The Iraqi-led forces took back the surrounding areas of the city one by one, such as the town of Sharkat, blocking the militant group's supply and escape routes. The Iraqi Air Forces dropped leaflets overnight, telling residents not to panic and to seal their doors and windows, warning the offensive was imminent. Mosul is Iraq's second largest city and has been under ISIS control since June 2014. Mosul is significant as it is the group's last major stronghold in Iraq, and the loss of the city, according to Baghdad authorities, would effectively mean the defeat of ISIS in the country. There's an estimated 1.2 million civilians currently in Mosul, leading to concerns about the humanitarian impact on the city. 이지원, Arirang News.
China has launched its manned spacecraft, the Shenzhou 11, into orbit. The rocket, carrying 2 astronauts, lifted off from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in western China at 7:30 a.m. on this Monday. Less than half an hour afterward, the Chinese authorities said everything had gone off as planned. The Shenzhou 11 will dock with the Tiangong 2 Space Lab on Tuesday, and the 2 astronauts will stay on board for 30 days, the longest stay in space by Chinese astronauts. They'll spend the month carrying out medical and space experiments. China's manned space flight program started in 1992, and through it the country hopes to develop a permanent space station by the early 2020s. And staying with the space theme, an experimental probe is expected to land on Mars this week as part of a joint European-Russian mission aimed at exploring the red planet's atmosphere and searching for signs of life. Kim Mok-yeon has more.
The 600-kilogram probe named Schiaparelli separated from an unmanned craft called the Trace Gas Orbiter on Sunday after its 7-month journey from Earth. The European Space Agency announced that the probe's entry, descent, and landing demonstrator module all went according to plan.
We have a confirmation that the separation has occurred, and we have also confirmation that the EDM switched on its transmitter and that the radio telescope in India could pick up the signal. So this is very good news on the EDM side.
Schiaparelli is expected to enter Mars's atmosphere at a speed of 21,000 kilometers an hour. Once on the surface, it will take images of Mars and conduct scientific measurements, but its main purpose is to test technology for a future European Mars rover. Its mothership will remain in orbit to analyze gases in the Martian atmosphere to help answer whether there is or was life on Mars. However, the latest signals received from the orbiter did not contain data on the lander's onboard status.
So it's an unexpected configuration of the spacecraft. The spacecraft is still there, it's transmitting, so I'm quite confident that in the next hours we will understand more.
The latest mission, led by ESA along with Russia's Roscosmos Space Agency, is a second European attempt to land a craft on Mars after Britain's infamous Beagle 2 vanished on Christmas Day in 2003. Kim Mok-yeon, Arirang News.
Now staying with the science-related news, but back down here on Earth, it's pretty normal to bleed after having an injection, and for the average person, there's not really much harm done by that. However, there are significant side effects for those who suffer from diseases that prevent the blood from clotting. But now, Korean researchers have developed a needle that will not make patients bleed at all. Park Se-young tells us more.
A tube of water covered with artificial skin leaks if pierced with a regular needle. But this needle, coated with a hemostatic substance, prevents water from escaping the tube. The so-called Bloodless Needle was developed by a team of researchers at KAIST. It has a solid film coating that dissolves into a hydrogel when it comes into contact with blood, preventing blood loss. The needle has so far proven effective in studies with mice and rabbits with hemophilia. The research team developed a hemostatic substance by using an adhesive substance similar to what mussels use to cling to rocks amid crashing waves.
The material we used has excellent interaction with blood, which further maximizes the hemostatic effects.
The researchers added that the film is broken down over time, causing no harm to the human body. The study, published in the online version of the journal Nature Materials, is set to enter the clinical trial phase of testing on human subjects. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Well, that's all the news we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for tuning in. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. So until then, goodbye.